morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and start. I've got 10 o'clock. Before we start, I'd like you to join me in a round of applause for our host, Lafayette High School. I'm over here, so it's easier for me to see what I'm supposed to say. Because unfortunately, otherwise I'll be over there and haven't got a clue. This is our agenda. Next. So welcome. It's my job to introduce the board of directors. In case you didn't know, I'm Bob Moeller, and I'm the president of the board. And to my right, starting there, is Carmen Hagen-Kleiser, who is our vice president, Bill Brenner, our treasurer, Sally Frazier, our secretary, director at large, George Spaltoff, director at large, Ray Van Cott, and finally, but not least, our director at large, Rick Deers. And you'll hear from them during the presentations. I already thanked you for joining us. As I walked in, I was heartened to see the cars in the parking lot because I knew that you were here early for coffee and donuts, not us. I'd like to run about 90 minutes. That's what we try and shoot for, but if we need to stay longer because you have more questions or whatever, we will. And like always, once the presentations are done, Monday morning we'll try and get all the slides up on the website. That's why a lot of the slides have a lot of information for those that aren't here. So we try and get as much information as we can on the slides so people that aren't here can do it. And then I'd ask that you hold your questions till the end. We have roving people that will hand microphones, so that'll facilitate everybody hearing what the question is, and we'll answer that. Okay, next. With that, we're going to go through our legal issues, and I turn it over to Sally Frazier.
Am I on now? Yes. Yes. Okay, first thing I need to do is... You can't... Oh, I moved it away. I'll keep practicing. Another 3 or 4 years I'll have this. First, I'd like to say, Mr. President, notice has been... This is pretty close, isn't it? Yep. Okay, is this loud enough? Okay. So, first I'd like to say, Mr. President, notice has been duly given and a quorum is present. The second part of my spiel here is that ballots are available for those who have not yet voted or who wish to change their vote. If anyone is interested in voting, please raise your hand, and Sally Walls has ballots. Okay. The last thing, as part of the voting process, there was a limited proxy and a resolution, and I'd like to just review that with you now. The results of the resolution will be, I will tell you later on when we have the total count, but right now I'll just run through what it was. There was a limited proxy 2020. And what you signed was, I being a member in good standing, do hereby appoint the Association Secretary, Sarah Fraser, or her designated representative as my true and lawful proxy to vote in my place and on my behalf, and in accordance with my wishes as indicated below, as though I were present and voting at the annual meeting of the Fort County Homeowners Association to be held at Lafayette High School, 4460 Long Hill Road, Williamsburg, Virginia, on February 1, 2020 at 10 a.m. or any adjournment thereof. Proposal: in order for the association to be eligible for lower taxes and to avoid paying taxes on any excess revenues in any one year, IRS regulations require that homeowners vote to roll over excess funds from one year to the following year. The board has anticipated this surplus and recommends your approval of the following resolution. And the resolution is resolved that excess funds, if any, from fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020 be rolled over to their respective following budget year, 2020 and 2021, in accordance with IRS Regulation 70-604. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you. No, let me go backwards.
the slide.
Sorry.
Okay, let's go.
There we go. Newbie.
Movies, okay. I know you want it over with quickly, but not that quickly, so. Anyway, what I'm going to do is condense the last 9 months into about 15 minutes for you and let you know where we sit for the coming year. Finance Committee, of course, is the heart and soul of the... Okay, how about this? Everywhere you go, there's different microphones. All right, so anyway, the Finance Committee is the heart and soul of the budget cycle, and this last year they began about March, about 10 months ago, putting together the 2020 budget. So it's not something that's slightly looked at. It was run by the Finance Committee's headed up by Rob Bon Jovi, and Daphne Kinkle was the Deputy Secretary. Don Lehman and Bob Merrill did a fantastic job of rejuvenating, if I could use Steve's words, the capital replacement reserve model for us and making it an easy tool we can use on a daily basis now. So the rest of the committee members are up there, as I've noted. I want to especially acknowledge the spending committee chairs. We exercised them quite well this year, heavier than usual, and I'll get into that in a minute. Management agents, Sally and Ryan, after all the work was done, that's what we needed to do. They're the ones that went out and got the costs. They're the ones that made the adjustments. They're the ones that presented all the data to the finance committees and spending committees as we move forward with the budget. Okay. And of course, the board member got a lot of help from them. Thank you. This is sort of a whimsical slide, but I'd like to show it to drive home a point. It's a very involved process. In the capital replacement reserve model, we got over 800 line items. And they're looked at every year in detail as to what needs to be done. They're either funded as they are, moved out, brought in, new developments, or they're deleted. The operational budget lines, there's 250 lines. So it's not an easy process to go through all these things. And it's very involved. I don't want to downplay what was accomplished by the committees. So, next. Okay, how did we do in 19? That was our budget. We had income higher than usual, not usual, higher than budget, and our expenses were about even, very close. And as a net, we come up with a savings of $57,696, and that's the money that Sally just mentioned we're going to roll over into 2020 and use this year. I will point out this $144,000. That's the deficit funding, what we call the deficit funding we put in the budget last year in order to balance the budget without passing it on as assessments to the homeowners. So we're going to come back to that a couple times throughout the briefing here. So next slide. End of the year cash, we're in pretty good shape. I want to point out here that the contingency cash is our invested reserve for the operational fund is usually $200,000. We put a 4% interest on that this year. We're going to do that from now on to cover inflation and keep the money at the proper value to use. We have about $147,000, what I call free cash, that we have available to operate this year as sort of a buffer between the assessments that come in and the expenses that come in at the same time, sometimes ahead of the assessments. So, next slide. Okay, we made a new budget process this year. Like I said, Finance Committee began last March to present to the board a new approach to the budget. It's called a zero deficit budget. That $144,000 I showed you earlier, those were carryover funds from previous years that were used, or available funds from previous years that were used to balance the budget. And those funds were as a result of contributions from homeowners or for income. And the idea is to have a zero deficit budget. In other words, move forward without having to refund that money. In other words, don't use any more carryover cash to fund the budget. Let's use pure assessments and keep the budget sensible. So what we did was we directed the spending committees to reduce their budget, end of the year budget, by $210,000 total. And that created a void. In other words, we had the budget up here for 2019, going into 2020, the starting point for all the ads were $210,000 less than where they were where we ended in 2019. So it was a method of reducing the budget that was fair across the board. So we began with what we call a zero deficit budget process. Next slide. Yes. We're going to have more on this later, believe it or not. Next slide, please. Every year the board puts out assumptions to the finance committee saying, hey, here's the framework we want you to use to present the budget back to us in the fall. So this year what we did was directed a 2.5%, 2.25% pay raise for the employees. And this is 1.5% for 12 months. The last 6 months is 1.5% additional. So the last 6 months the employees are going to get a 3% pay raise. The finance committee, given the unknowns we had when we were in the fall developing the assumptions on the pipes, we directed the finance committee to give us 2 budgets. One with the pipe repairs and additional inspections included in the budget, because we wanted to see what it did to the assessments. And then the second budget was we wanted to see what the budget was without the pipes in it. In other words, a special assessment. So it was an easy decision once we got the budgets from the finance committee, and hence we went the special assessment route. Next slide. Okay, some of the things we put in the budget this year is to keep the colony running. We bought Crystal and her team 2 new vehicles, roving patrol vehicles. They put 50,000 miles a year on these vehicles, patrolling the area day and night for us. And after 200,000 or 4 years, we replaced the vehicles. And then the routine replacement for the gate cameras, higher quality gate cameras. Yes, we can get your license plate now. And gate mechanisms. And no matter how visible we make those gates, some people just insist on driving through. Okay, RPM. Pipe replacement. The key thing here I want to point out is we've got $190,000 in here for pipe replacement. That is not the special assessment. That's to take care of the rest of the colony. And we've done this for 10 years now. We're going to put $190,000 in for 10 years to take care of the remainder of the pipes in the colony that are outside of the immediate problem we have with the early deterioration of the pipes. Okay. Drainage allocation, that's normal routines, and LED replacements. I do want to point out the nature trail. There's been a lot of dialogue going on the nature trail. We're using a self-help program with our own employees, and this is for the materials that we use to replace the walkways and the bridges throughout the walking trail down behind Westbury. Next slide. Okay, facilities. Two takeaways on here I want to show you. One, we're resurfacing the pool. For those of you who go down to swim and tennis and look out there, you'll see the empty pool with a bunch of guys walking around the bottom. They're doing all the inspections for us, and they're going to have this done by April, I hope. Last time it was done was 9 years ago, 10 years ago. We've got about a 20-year life coming up on this replacement, so this is a good investment. Exterior refurbishment at the ballroom. For those of you who can work in the S&T committees and so forth, you've seen the patterns that put up A, pattern B, and you got a chance to vote on them. We're going to decorate, upgrade, and put a new face on the swim and tennis ballroom. We use that for rental income. It's a good investment, and this keeps us competitive with the other facilities in the area for increased rent. By the way, they selected theme A. Okay, capital investment fund. We created this last year, and the idea was it's a result of the surveys that were taken as to what the residents wanted for increased amenities. And there's a lot of numbers there I'm not going to go over, but this is on the record if you are so interested. But the survey, the facilities committee took the survey, garnered up the top 10 items, 15 items they wanted to do, developed a plan, they gave it to the board, and the board created this capital investment fund with the help of the finance committee. We we funded the committee, we tried to fund it at $70,000 a year. And this next upcoming first year this year, 2019, we had 4 design and engineering efforts to go on for future projects, so we get an exact cost of what we need to do for an investment. And then we also put the new bocce ball court in, which is up and running over by Chris Wicker's house at Westbury. This year, go one slide back. This year, 2020, the key things out of the capital investment fund we're going to do are the new pickleball nets and the RV lot, A, B, and C. And I just want to point out here, that's basically $100,000 of amenities that we're putting in this year, 2020. And the idea is that we keep it funded at a certain level every year. This absorbs the big hiccups that show up when these projects show up for funding. About like the capital replacement reserve model, and that's where this money is. Next slide. Okay, I'll spend a few minutes on this slide. The first one is the RV lot. Presently, around the RV lot, we use that for bulk storage. This is where fill dirt is, limbs, trash, mulch, and this is the CSB in this area. The employees park in this area here in front of the CSB. We're going to take the bulk storage around the RV lot, move it over to B, store it in the back of B, parcel B. This is parcel C. We purchased these about 4 years ago. And the employees this parcel C will be resurfaced, and this will become the employee parking lot. That frees up this space here for parking, increased parking. We have 39 more RV lots, more spaces in there. That's a direct influence to our bottom line as far as revenue goes. So we have 47 vehicles on the waiting list. We've taken care of 39 of them, and we'll work on the remainders. The parking area now frees up more space for those who use the exercise studio and the volunteers who are there for the meetings that go on quite frequently at CSB. Pickleball. A little sea story. When I was on the facilities committee, I had I called him my lawyer, Roger Allen. He came up one day and he says, I think we need a pickleball court. This was about 5, 6 years ago. And of course, you can imagine the jokes that started, because most people hadn't heard of pickleball at that time, especially in our community. Well, this is Roger Allen's dream at this point. In 6 years, we've got 6 courts now. This year, we're putting in permanent nets. These are temporary nets. These will be permanent nets. And it allows us to compete with the other community areas, pickleball teams, and legitimate competition. So we are now having an extra plus in our marketing presentations that we are a certified pickleball community. So this is good. Okay, 2020. About 6.2 after the assessment. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. The main thing I want to point out here is that the assessments come in represent about 92% of the budget. And the other 8% or 7.5% come from this myriad of fees and incomes. This is your talk of the colony. This is the talk of the colony. This is the RV income, lot income. This is the swim and tennis income. These are the fees that security is paid by Marriott to patrol their areas. This is $500,000 that we don't have to pass on to the residents. So this is very important, and we keep working on this every year to increase these as best we can. And that's what we're doing with the RV lot and the swim and tennis ballroom. Next. For 2020, roughly, capital replacement is about 1.3 million. Operations about 4.9, 4.8. Next. Just a quick breakout of the budget expenses here, and the 1.3 million for the capital reserve model. This is the pipes, LED replacement, so forth, drainage, facilities. This is a pool, security. That's the vehicles. Over here on the operational side, 4.9 million. These two here, between security and RPM, the bulk of those, $3 million plus, is salaries. And that's how we keep our place looking beautiful. That's how we keep your home valued. So it's worth it. It's worth the investment. G&A, that's the management agent's contract. And facilities, that's the pool operations and the salaries that go in the pool. All right. Before the assessment of $9 a quarter, we had $6.151 million from previous year's assessments. So that was our base of the assessment income. We lowered the demands by $210,000 against that. We're able to add in all the items we showed before. Came up with $107,000 deficit. Now, we said we didn't want to do any deficit spending, so next slide. That $107,000 was covered entirely by the assessment increase. So the remaining deficit, which was the objective of the Finance Committee last March, is zero. Last year, $145,000. This year, zero. So that was a complete win-win as far as the Finance Committee goes in the system. Contingency cash, again, pointed this out earlier, we have a total of $355,000 to support our operational funds. And there's the contingency is invested, and this is what we call our free cash, which is a buffer, like I said, between the assessments and the expenses when they come in. Next slide. Okay, here's the $9 increase, what it does for each lot owner. A minimal increase and significant increase in benefits this year. Next slide. Okay, I told you I'd get to this in a minute. Next slide. The board made the decision late in the process that the special assessment was what had to happen in order to fund the pipes as we had it more clearly defined towards the end of the year. The $400 a year we need from each lot assessment is going to generate about $1.195 million, which takes care of the immediate investments, corrections, repairs that we need, and allows us to do the remainder of the inspections that we need, and to move ahead with remaining inspections after we do the inspections, remaining repairs after we do the inspections. The special project, we put this in the capital replacement investment program, and it's a single line item in there. It's going to be accounted for separately. All the settlement funds go directly into it. So this will be very clear accounting-wise as far as the repairs go, the income coming in to support them, and the remainder funds that are available. So, as I pointed out earlier, we're going to keep this $190,000 in the capital reserve separate under the normal operations to take care of the drainage issues throughout the rest of the colony. So I think overall we've got our hands around this, and right now, next slide. Next slide, I'm going to turn this over to Ray and let him give you more details on the pipes.
I'll try working with this microphone. I know that we've had trouble with microphones almost in all presentations. So I thought I would just take a few minutes to go ahead and update you as to where we are as of today with the pipe issue that I brought forward in the town hall meeting back in November. Before I do that, let's do a quick recap of the process and what our problem is. There are 9.6 miles of plastic HDPE single wall pipe throughout Ford's Colony, either in the storm gutters, underneath the roads, and through our spillways. That pipe was put into Ford's Colony between the years of 1997 and 2003 and was designated to last about 50 years. Starting in 2018, we started to have unexpected failures of that pipe. So in 2019, the board authorized a visual inspection of a sampling of those pipes in each of the sections that they existed. Now, a visual inspection is hiring an outside firm who brings in a television-like robot, and it goes through the pipes taking recordings.
Those recordings then are viewed by the engineering staff to determine whether the pipe is good to go or it needs to be fixed or replaced. Overall, we looked at about 41% of the pipe throughout Ford's Colony during this initial inspection. And the good news was about 71% of the pipe was actually good and required no further action. Now that means that we have 29% that didn't make the cut and had some type of damage. Of that, again, we were fortunate enough that 72% of the total, and you can see the totals there on the board, could be fixed and repaired. The remaining, though, need to be replaced. Now, repairing is a process of snaking through the damaged pipe, a lining that's embedded in epoxy and then heated to expand to form basically a new pipe inside of the bad plastic pipe. So if your pipe has a crack or a hole in it, this new pipe will expand and those pipes and that crack go away. Replacement is a lot more expensive. Replacement means we have to dig up the yards or the roadways where the pipe is and go ahead and dig it out and then put in new pipe. At the time that we ran those inspections, the estimated cost over the period of 12 years was $3.4 million. The good news, or if there's a silver lining in any of this, is that repairing, which is the bulk of our issue, is cheaper than replacing. Next slide, please. In November, we went ahead and put forward in the town hall meeting, and the board passed a plan to address this. First and foremost, we want to finish inspection of the remaining plastic pipe. We've looked at 41%, we have to look at the remaining 59% to see how it matches up to the rest, to the samplings that we've already taken. Second point is we want to maximize the amount of money we can get out of James City County to help defray this expense. So we were going to apply for grants, much as we did in 2019 where we did receive grant money. So we're going to go after more grant money from James City County. And the third point is we wanted to start work as soon as possible for two reasons. One, we didn't want the pipe to continue to deteriorate. If a pipe has a small crack, let's fix it now before it develops into a big crack where we have to dig it out. And second, there were really substantial discounts being offered by vendors for us to go ahead and give them a lot of work. By that I mean you can hire a vendor to do something in a day or 2 days or a weekend, and you're going to pay one price. But if you go ahead and you bring him up and you give him a whole section and he's going to have his equipment and his people going there for a month, he'll give you a better price and a better discount. And in talking to vendors, that's what we were going to achieve. When we looked at the discounts and we looked at the James City County grants, we were able to take the $3.4 million estimate down to a new estimate of about 3.1. So as we said in November, this is how we funded it, and Bill brought up to it. We had a special assessment of $400 per household over 2020 at $100 per quarter, and we increased the capital reserve to $190,000 per year. If you do the math between the two, you'll see that we're knocking on the door of $3.1 million. So where are we now? Next slide, please. We've actually started. Pipe replacement in our worst section, this section that failed first in Southport, phase 1 has been completed, and phase 2 is currently underway. This is pipe replacement. Phase 1 of the pipe inspections have started, and I'm hoping that you're looking at your weekly What's Happening in Ford's Colony email newsletter, because we use that newsletter to announce where we're doing work. $133,000 worth of grants have been applied for in James City County. We should hear about those grants and whether we're going to get any of that money sometime in the next 2-3 weeks. But unfortunately, we're not going to get the money until the end of James City County fiscal year, which is June 30th. That means we're going to have to take the pipe inspection and break it into 2 parts. That which we're going to wait to get James City County money, and that which we'll fund ourselves. And the Rosen Project Management Committee are currently engaged in putting together the RFP specifications for bidding out to vendors to do the repair, the lining work. They're working with our contract and engineering firm, AES, and we expect to have that all done in February so we can go ahead and go out to bid. I ask you again to look at what's happening in Ford's Colony website, email when it comes in, because we're faced with doing some repair work which is digging up the road at the Edinburgh intersection. And everybody knows that's one of our most busiest intersections. So we'll announce when we're going to start there. I ask you then to pay attention to that, and if you find yourself you normally travel that way, those days that we're there, I ask you to take an alternative route, which is going to take you longer, but you're going to avoid the tie-ups we're going to have with traffic. So, this is where we are today. If you really, this is just a brief recap. If you really want to explore this issue any more in depth, you can go to the Forts Colony website for my presentation, both the video and slides, as well as my November Talk of the Colony issue on which cover this whole issue. Again, is available for you to take a look at. Thank you.
Good morning. Before I start my portion, I ask that anyone who has a ballot, please raise your hand and a staff member will come by to collect it. See one in the back on the right-hand side. I know we have one on the back on the left-hand side. While these few ballots are being collected, I would like to thank Sally and staff for their preparations for today. Each year I repeat one of my annual themes because it is so important to know and appreciate what makes us so special. We have a governance model that has been honed since the transition from the developer 20 years ago. We've grown from 8 to 13 committees, and we've also combined our landscaping design and subcommittee under RPM and our emergency preparedness subcommittee under security. Our governance model is an elected board of directors with 13 standing committees and ad hoc committees and task forces for individual or specific assignments. The association's board retains RCS as the management agent to operate the day-to-day business of the association. The board governs and is focused on policy, budgets, and planning. This is straight out of the book from Community Associations Institute, and our board excels on focusing their role on these governing priorities. RCS, as the management agent, in coordination with our 13 advisory committees, conducts the association business along these 6 main lines. We have internalized the theme of staying in our lanes. As I noted, the board's lane is policy, budgets, and long-term planning. The committees are advisors to both the board and the management agent although a few committees do have specific tasks delegated by the board, such as the ARC on construction plan approvals, communications producing our print and social media, and covenants for violation determinations. The role of the management agent is the operational task of running the business. The MA role also has an advisory component, which we have termed the aide-de-camp. We advise on a number of issues, some of which the President will be addressing later this morning. This slide indicates a few topics that we routinely provide advice to the board and committees. We will continue to update you in the Talk of the Colony magazine and by email as progress occurs. Forts Colony is similar to a small town with very complex issues concerning federal law, state statutes and county ordinances, and plan approval requirements. Sally and I bring our 57 years of community association experience to get to the base of issues, provide an operator's practical perspective, and reduce expenses providing background and proposed outcomes in legal, civil engineering, and financial issues, to name a few. You may know that I travel the country a few times each year, educating managers and board members in the business of community associations. I like to stress that these managers and volunteers are in fact operating a small business. In Forts Colony, as a business, we own and maintain assets, collect revenue, pay expenses, and maintain insurance as a few examples in this $6 million community association business. Speaking of our volunteers, volunteerism is the lifeblood of Ford's Colony. It's also our lifestyle. It's what makes us remarkably special and somewhat unique in the large-scale community business. It is a model that works well for us, but it also requires a vigilance to keep the pipeline full of service-minded people. We seek service, people that wish to give back, people that love our neighborhood and want continuous improvement, people that like to know what's going on in Ford's Colony. We are extraordinarily grateful for our volunteers. We are Ford's Colony because of them, and because many of you are here today. Thank you, and you know I love this part. Please give yourself a round of applause. I am very grateful for the opportunity to live and work here in Ford's Colony for the past 35 years in various capacities. As many of you know, Sally Walls and I became the sole owners of RCS, your management company, in 2014. Sally is a William & Mary graduate in accounting, and she maintains her certification in public accounting. Sally also leads on insurance, human resources, group insurance, and personnel. Sally maintains her professional community association manager credential. Before I go on with staff members, I would like to acknowledge 3 folks that retired last year. Deborah Brown, Chief of Security, Lieutenant Al Blackburn, Mobile Patrol Supervisor, and Neil Miller, Maintenance Zone 5 Supervisor. It was hard to say goodbye to these employees, but serving here for 2 to 3 decades is a remarkable personal journey, and we are very grateful for their service. You are very familiar with Jenny Holland, our Activities and Recreation Manager. I would like to thank Jenny for her increasing role in our print and social media and just getting the job done, facilitating our activities and running the pools. Ryan Lee manages roads and project maintenance and has more than 13 years experience. Ryan is certified as a professional community association manager and is responsible for new capital improvements as well as facilities maintenance, working closely with Jenny. Ryan will be deeply involved in our drainage pipe inspections and repairs this year. Crystal Bowers was promoted from second in command to Chief of Security in a ceremony before the Board of Directors last fall. Her leadership has already had an impact, and we look forward to continuing our great relationship with James City County Police, Fire, and Rescue. We are pleased to congratulate Sergeant Jennifer Crespo for her internal promotion to replace the administrative role left by Captain Bowers, formerly Captain Bowers. And we are pleased to announce our newest hire, Lieutenant Karen Schuler, as our Mobile Patrol Supervisor. Lieutenant Schuler recently retired from James City County Police, having attained the rank of investigator. We look forward to her experience in the concept of community policing and helping us translate that into our service to our community. Many of you have been served by our smiling front office staff. They are often our first opportunity to show that we are passionate about relationships and committed to service. Audrey Miller leads the front office and has for more than 17 years experience with us. Maintaining standards and routine in customer service is extremely important to us. We welcomed Peggy Willis as our bookkeeper last December. Many of you know Peggy from her time at the Country Club. Teresa Motes helped us with running the pools last year, and more importantly, supervising the teenage lifeguards. Teresa came inside last fall to assist Jenny and Richard with activity scheduling and setup, and is already working on hiring lifeguards for this summer. It is amazing to share this graphic with you. 50% of our full-time staff have more than 5 years experience, commonly known as the benchmark for achieving a level of expertise. This is simply extraordinary in the hourly wage earning grounds maintenance, and security business. Here's a quick look at our maintenance and security employees. As this graphic details, there is a 2.3% unemployment rate in James City County. I've shared my concern with the board concerning employee retention. We certainly understand that the Virginia Peninsula is fully employed. The pressure on other job opportunities is increasing. At $12 to $14 an hour, or about $25,000 to $29,000 a year before taxes, cash and benefits are constantly on their mind. Fortunately, we offer a great place to work, and you are a big part of that in the kindness and generosity you share with us. Our employees are well trained and do good work for us. We are very fortunate. Please join me in showing our appreciation to them. As an outlook for 2020, our upcoming projects include 12 jobs in roads and project maintenance at a budget of about $1.7 million, as well as 14 jobs in facilities for about $500,000, and 6 projects in landscape design and renovation for about $20,000. These are just some of the projects that we track specifically for the board and committee in specific worksheets. The inspection, repair, and replacement of drainage pipes will certainly consume most of the budget in roads and project maintenance in those jobs I was telling you about. We will assist the board in tracking several parcels and issues in and around the community. I expect we will hear more about the Eagles Cliff condo parcel, Eagle Construction, and the CCRC parcels this year. President Bob Mueller will address this matter in his remarks. The FCHOA enjoys tremendous exposure and influence in the community association industry. It is RCS's pleasure to represent our community and our industry in a number of ways. I'm scheduled to speak at a conference in Australia this summer for Community Associations Institute. You may recall that I was appointed to the Virginia Common Interest Community Board, a cousin to the Real Estate Board, and I was elected chair for this year. I will also chair the international credentialing body for managers in our field of work. Education is very important to us, so we continue as instructors for manager education, and Audrey Miller serves on the board of directors for our Central Virginia chapter of Community Associations Institute. And this is remarkable. We have 3 RCS managers that hold the Professional Community Association Manager designation. This is the highest level achievement in our industry. We often network with other community associations, both locally and nationally, regarding our policies and programs. It brings us great pride to know that our Ford's Colony Community Association is a model for governance, community spirit, communications, new resident programs, financial management, and overall volunteerism. I'd like to close by thanking you for your amazing generosity and kindness to our employees. Your contributions to the Employee Holiday Fund, your smiles and waves in the field, your motivating comments, all making Ford's Colony a wonderful and rewarding place to work. It is truly our pleasure to serve. Thank you, and it's now my pleasure to give you to Vice President Carmen Hague-Kleiser. Thank you.
I think we've cracked the code on how to be heard. Everybody can hear me? Excellent. Good morning. At the end of each year, we undertake a comprehensive evaluation of the performance of the managing company, in this case RCS, their management team, and staff. The evaluation consists of 32 specific performance items grouped into 6 categories: administrative services, fiscal or financial services, physical management, maintenance of data and systems, personnel management, and other management attributes. Each of the 13 standing committees and each board member independently evaluates the RCS staff and management team using these performance criteria in light of the annual budget and the annual board and committee goals. In providing their assessments, a rigorous 5-point performance scale is used, as you can see here. It is important, and I think very critical, to emphasize that here in Ford's Colony, we set a very high standard for what constitutes meets requirements or a 3 rating. It reflects the level of performance expected from a highly qualified and experienced management team and staff, as Drew just noted. Ratings above meets requirements must be supported with specific examples, and we had a number of those this year. A 5 rating is reserved for examples of exceptional performance, which are truly breakthrough in nature. Next slide. In compiling consolidated average ratings for the board and all the standing committees, the managing agent and his team met or exceeded requirements for all 32 items. Topping the list of strengths noted in the combined board and committee ratings were the following 6 items that I'd just like to highlight right now are 4-star ratings and above. Response to emergencies and non-routine situations, knowledge of governing documents and policies, response to inquiries and concerns. And this would be not just from the board and standing committees, but from our residents. Budget formulation, and this year that was especially important in light of our 5-year reserve advisory review of our capital replacement and reserve budget, in addition to our normal annual audit. Customer and stakeholder interactions and service, and finally, judgment in exercising their responsibilities. In summary, RCS, our management company, the management team and staff received an overall combined board standing committee rating of 3.7 for 2019. This reflects performance that fully meets our very high requirements and exceeds them in a number of cases. Based on this evaluation, the board has determined that a management award has been earned. And now, on behalf of the board, I would like to thank the RCS management team and staff for all they do to make Ford's Colony the award-winning community that we are all privileged to call home. Thank you. I'd like to introduce George Spaltoff.
Good morning. You've heard an awful lot of very important information so far this morning about the budget, about the management team. But I have the most important part, and that's to recognize our volunteers. Ford's Colony would not be what it is without our volunteers. If you ever think for one moment you'd like to be a volunteer, you need to put your name out so that we know you're available. Without our volunteers, the minimum your dues would increase to get that work done on an annual basis is about $500. It could easily be double or triple that amount. We have 130 plus dedicated volunteers who are sharing their lifetime skills to keep Ford's Colony where it is. We want to be premier. We want to support our home values. Volunteerism in Ford's Colony is how that happens. Moving on then, I would like to begin by recognizing the people who are, for 2019, were on the standing committees and subcommittees. And for lack of any other reason, we're going to do this alphabetically by committee name. So, by the way, it takes a few hours a month, and you don't have to be an architect, you don't have to be a civil engineer. You can help, trust me. We have spots and places for anybody who would like to step forward. So, for 2019, the Activities Committee. Run a club, volunteer. This is the group that manages all that. They meet once a month, the Activities Committee. We are at 64 activities at the moment. If you go around Williamsburg or many other places, you'll find that they have a few clubs. We have 64. And growing, by the way. Next 2 pages are the various activities committee groups, which we affectionately call clubs and interest groups. I'm not going to read them. We don't want to take you past lunch. So then, we also have service groups. They're out there helping you, helping our kids, being prepared, helping us to be prepared in case we had a hurricane or a torrential storm. Volunteers for education in our schools, helping. There's a theme here. Moving on to the first standing committee, second standing committee, the Architectural Review Committee. They meet every week. They review home plans. They look to see if the homes are being built in accordance with what's been approved. We have field inspectors. I just built a home this past year. You meet them on your property. They're walking around telling you it's either clean enough or it isn't, or that piece needs changed or something like that. They are the eyes of the Architectural Review Committee. Next committee. You're doing very well, who's ever flipping this. The Communications Committee. Talk of the colony, what's happening in Ford's Colony. The pulse survey that was done. We need some more people on the Communications Committee. This is a very important committee because it tells you, if you're not involved with 13 committees, and nobody except these board members hear that, what's going on, what's happening week by week, what's happening monthly. When is Bridge going to meet again, or yet? So much more. No specific talent involved, just helping. The Covenants Committee. We have a few folks that don't like to follow the rules. So we have a Covenants Committee that helps them to learn what the rules are and to follow them. The Facilities Committee. Obviously, we have a lot of facilities. We have a lot going on, always. They keep everything shining. They keep us at the forefront of having whatever is needed. Pickleball, redoing the inside of swim and tennis. All things that were thought of last year that have been budgeted and the prices have been known, or at least estimated. So it works out into our budget. Finance Committee. You've heard Bill's report. Bill did not dream up those numbers, although sometimes we question that. They're watching every one of your dollars, our dollars. The Marketing Committee. They're there for the sole purpose of helping to reinforce our home values. They could use a few more members too. Landscape Design Subcommittee. Where we put flowers, where we put fencing to make things more attractive. This is all their plans. The Security Committee, keeping us safe. What more can you say? Emergency Preparedness Subcommittee, being prepared and ready if we have a problem. You never see these people until all of a sudden something happens and they're there and they're ready and they know what to do. They're a certified emergency response team. Strategic Planning Committee, planning ahead, providing the surveys, helping the board make decisions what our goals should be. The Technology Committee, innovation, support to all the other committees for the various software and databases they have. You see them behind the scenes. They're doing things. In our swim and tennis, by the way, they'll be implementing a new microphone system so that our meetings will be a little bit better with less problems with microphones. Volunteer management. I think I've given you my best pitch, that if you're here and you're not volunteering, you should be. We need some more people. It's as simple as that. You can go on our website, you can volunteer. The only thing you need to be is an owner. We'll take care of the rest. Now I have the distinct pleasure of recognizing some retiring or departing committee chairs. They're back. Each year, the committee chairs, after they have served and given their all for a few years, we want to recognize them. These are special people. So starting with Activities Committee, John Cryer.
Tell them if they're here, come on forward.
If you're here, come forward, please. Okay?
I get his.
Communications Committee, I know she's here. Terry Weiss. Thank you, Terry. From the Covenants Committee, Tommy Michaels. I know he's here. From the Finance Committee, Rob Bongioli. I didn't.
One second, I thought I was going to get another.
From the Nominating Committee, Dale Callender, Galinder. From Roads and Project Maintenance, Clay McEldown. I didn't see. From the Security Committee, Ken Ruskowski. From the Technology Committee, Tom Slotwinski. And last but not least, from the Volunteer Management Committee, Dennis Brandon. Once again, my message is clear. We can use some more volunteers. Volunteers help support your association and help support keeping your assessments down. That's the bottom line. Please volunteer if you can. It's easy via the website. And again, thank you to all of our volunteers. And one more round of applause, please. Now I'd like to ask Rick Beers to come up.
Hi, everybody. I'm one of the rookies on the board, and in my past year, I basically got 2 surprises instead of 1. The 2 surprises, the first is I haven't got my Christmas bonus yet. Now, I haven't got it. Now, I don't know if it's been held up in finance or bill. I'll check Jelly in the Month Club even. Nothing. Take a collection.
Double it next year.
Seriously though, I've had 1 surprise after my first year. I guess something I knew, but I didn't experience it, and that's the board itself. It's the depth of expertise on this board. It is the diversity of skills that exist on the board, and most importantly, the degree of commitment that's displayed. It really is. It really works. It clicks. Luckily, we're open with our opinions. Luckily, we're of differing opinions, but it works. And when we have some of those members complete their terms, what we need to do is to recognize the achievements that they provided to the community, as we recognize many of you volunteering on committees. This is very important to us all. And we have 3 members leaving the board today. The first is Bill Brenner. Bill served 4 years on the board, 2 terms, during which he was liaison to the Finance Committee for 3 years and Volunteer Management Committee for 1 year. He's been the board treasurer for 3 years. And in addition to his time on the board, he has served on the Facilities Committee for 4 years, 2 of which he has chaired. Bill, you will be missed. And by all means, spouses, please come down as your, well, not your better half, but your second half. I don't know how that works. Second board member completing her term is Sally Frazier. She served 2 years on the board, and most of that time as secretary. And she has been liaison during that time to the Facilities Committee, Roads and Project Maintenance, and finally Volunteer Management Committees. Thank you, Sally. And finally, George Spaltall. George has served for the past 2 years on the board this term, but he has previously served 8 years on the board, and during which he's just basically done everything. Board president, vice president, and treasurer. He led last year led the 2019 management agent rebid task force. And kind of on his spare time, he was liaison into the technology committee. George, congratulations. Helen. And I think I'm now turning it over to Bob. Are you next?
No, I think Sally is next.
So since all the votes are in, since all the votes are in, let me just read the resolution one more time. It's very short. That excess funds, if any, from fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020 be rolled over to their respective following budget year 2020 and 2021 in accordance with IRS Regulation 70-604. The votes are in. The votes to approve were 1,084. The votes to disapprove were 23. It's passed 98% to 2%.
I think the next one is Denise Nugent. Do we have you up here?
Thank you. Good morning. On behalf of the nominating committee, thank you to the candidates for running. Thank you for all of you for voting. And your newly elected directors for 2020 are Sally Frazier, George Spalthoff, and Ken Spencer. Congratulations.
And I echo the congratulations to our board members and look forward to working with you next year. It's that time, next slide, for the President's remarks. Next slide. Oh, I'm way fast. This is what I'm going to go over, and I've got slides for each one of these. Next. The management agent rebid. George Spalthoff did a magnificent job, along with board members Sally Frazier and Ray Van Cott, to do the rebid for our management agent. He had representatives from all 13 standing committees that helped him. They put in 16 months of work to do this, and we got it right. So I want to thank George for that, and you can see what we had done. Next. Task force evaluated everything. Drainage pipes. You've already gotten enough numbers and all that, and of course, I'm not going to have a small quiz here, but you heard what it was from Ray. Next slide. What I want to do is kind of walk around the colony, because I want to talk about things that are upcoming or dealt with this year. And this is just to orient you kind of where we are, where we are. If I can make this thing work. Yeah. So we're up here at Forge Colony Drive, actually Lafayette High School, near Forge Colony Drive. Going around, one of the things that we have is, this is Westport, which is opposite the Manchester Gate here. And this is the area I'll talk about, which was purchased by James River Baptist Church. It's adjacent to Westport A. Westport is part of the HOA, but not part of the master plan, because they have a different zoning. So I'll talk about that. And then coming down, this is an area that we call the Eagle Construction. Eagle Construction, if you've been out to Newtown, and I know everybody has, probably to Trader Joe's, you look across, Eagle Construction is doing a lot of there. They are doing some spec houses here in the colony, but Eagle Construction purchased it, and we'll talk about that. Parcels B and C are just, that was last year, we purchased them, we're using them, you heard about those. Coming around then, what do we have? CCRC down here. This is opposite, it's on News Road, it's opposite the Firestone entrance off of News Road. I'll talk about that. And then coming all the way around, Long Hill Road expansion. If you came down Long Hill, if you came out of Williamsburg West Gate, you constantly see what's happening on Long Hill Road. That's phase one. There are 3 phases. The other 2 phases aren't funded yet, but that's it. We'll talk about that. And then finally, what I want to talk about is the proffer amendment, and these are just some of the areas that we're dealing with. And lastly is there's this little piece right in here, and that's been purchased. It's about 20 acres by New Zion Baptist Church, and they abut our properties, especially over in the, what's it called over there? Berkshire area. So we'll talk about those. Next slide. Proffer amendment process. You've heard this about a year. Basically, proffers are developer impact fees, if you will. They offer them to the zoning and legal bodies to try and get their things through. We have unfulfilled proffers from our developer who developed it, and James City County kind of came to us and say, well, you're the only entity that's left. We think you ought to fulfill these unfulfilled proffers. All those unfulfilled proffers come with a fiscal impact to us. So we prepared an amendment and put it in and said we'd like to amend it and get out of, extinguish some of these unfulfilled proffers to save money. We submitted the traffic study because that's one of the things they wanted. And luckily, one of our partners in the undeveloped areas there, Reedus, which is over by Eagles Cliff, they own the parcel that has the 5 paths where they haven't built the condos there yet. They had a traffic study done. And they allowed us to use their traffic study. It cost about $20,000 if we had to do it ourselves. We used there, we submitted it to the James City County. Unfortunately, they looked at it, it took them a few months, they shared it with VDOT and all that. They basically said, oh, this is just a preliminary, you need to do a final. Well, a final costs you another $5,000 or $6,000. Once again, Regis stepped up to the plate and said, we'll do it, they paid for it. We've submitted that to the county, and now the county says, it's been so long, we need a resubmittal. But the big thing on this traffic study was it supports a right-hand turn lane off of Long Hill Road into Ford's Colony Drive. And we're okay with that. We've actually offered up in our proffer amendment that we participate in paying for that, some portion of that. The thing we don't want is that traffic light. A traffic light, it may be a nice thing to have at Ford's Colony Drive, but that's $500,000, depending on how many lanes, turns, and how much signalization is needed. So we've resubmitted, we're going to go through the process, and I'm optimistic that maybe we can get through the planning process and up to the James City County supervisors in the May, June timeframe. Next. CCRC, Continuing Care Retirement Community. Last year, actually 2 years ago, it was December of 18, I think, a company called Retirements Unlimited came to us and said, hey, we're going to develop that property that's across from the Firestone. And this Retirement Unlimited told us all about it, got everybody excited about it, only to find out that they couldn't ink the deal with the seller. They couldn't come to an agreement. So now Retirement Unlimited is partnering with this Fry Properties down in Norfolk, and they're going to split what each has to put in with. Retirement Unlimited is kind of an expert in, I call it assisted living, kind of in memory care. So they'll do that, and then Fry Properties will do the independent living because they do homes and everything, and we're hopeful that do. We expect them to come back and talk to us about it because they're looking at Ford's Colony as an input source for all of their CCRC. So it's always good to know that you're wanted. They want you. So we'll see when that comes through. The next one is the James River Baptist Church, not to be confused with the New Zion Baptist Church, which we'll talk about. Their property is part of this, what we call the Westport B over here. They are part of the HOA, not part of the master plan. Because they're part of the HOA, they're going, gee, that doesn't sync with us, because we don't think we're going to want to make it residential properties, and that's what we're all about, is residential properties. That's how we do our assessments, etc. So they want us to explore, how do we go about decoupling us from the HOA? And so we said, figure it out with your lawyers. You can work with our lawyers, but you pay for our lawyers' time because it's your benefit to uncouple from us. And we haven't heard much back. We're awaiting the next steps. Next. Eagle. You're going to say, geez, all you're doing is waiting. You haven't done anything. And you're right. Unfortunately, all this process takes time. This is the property that's located up here in the, oops, not the wrong one. There we go. Up here, it's about, I think, 40 acres. And what they did is they came into us and said, we'd like to develop that. We want to go in for rezoning because we'd like to zone it from, it's currently zoned at A1, which is one unit per 3 acres. We want to go to R4, which is what we have in our Ford's Colony area. And so we were supporting that. They went in and the James City County said no. They denied their application. They appealed that, and the appeal had to go through the courts, which is also denied. So we're just waiting to see, but Eagle Construction still owns that piece of property. Long Hill Road, if you live out Williamsburg Westway, kind of, I guess it's Great Glen and some of those, I've met with and talked to a few of the residents there. They're very concerned about the screening. If you notice, there was some screening from the road, and it's gone. And that's gone because of all the utility easement relocation within the utility easement. So we've been talking to them about it. We're requesting landscape plans from VDOT. One of the residents there has actually talked to the project manager, and we have two, and said, do you have plans? Oh, yes, we have plans. Can we see them? Oh, yes, we have plans. So we're waiting to see if we can pull it out of VDOT to see what their final plans are for any kind of screening. But in the meantime, we're working with the residents to say, there's a buffer between the road, and then they have an extended right-of-way that VDOT has. Next to that is a utility easement. You don't want to plant in the utility easement because they won't let you, take it out. And then there's another buffer, and some buffer in there is the HOA's buffer, and we talked to the residents and said, we'd be willing to work with you to allow you to plant something in our buffer, but we want to make sure that VDOT's done with their relocations. Otherwise, you plant it and they're tearing it up, the next day. It's crazy. So we're working with them. If you're interested in finding out, there's the website address. And like I said at the start, we are going to post all these slides and everything on our website so you can find out about it. Okay, this is a recent issue that came up. I think it was October, November. New Zion Baptist Church, which currently exists here. This is Long Hill. Forge County Drive is over here, off the chart over this way. And they currently own this much. They purchased from a seller this piece here, this piece down to, this is our pond over near Mahogany Run, which is here. So these are Forge Colony homes. These are Forge Colony homes, close. This is another development called Burlington Woods. And we've talked to, I think it was, there it is, January 13th, we had a meeting with all the residents, posted materials on the website. We talked to the residents. We said we'd post, these slides and everything. We went to the architect that's doing this. The Mount Zion Baptist Church has hired, I call it a land planner, who kind of just puts boxes on there and say, this is recreational, this is church use, this is this, this is that. And so he has a concept. This is concept 2, because he's already talked to James City County, and they did not like this. This is concept 1, excuse me. And then they didn't like it, so he came up with another concept, and which is this, which changed. No, that's the original one. Is there another one in there?
That's it.
Is that it? I've got the ball fields, because the ball fields are down here, now they're not there. So anyway, we'll have all the different concept 1, concept 2. We've sent a letter to the architect. A lot of the neighbors have, your Forge County neighbors have sent their comments to the architect. So we want to get as many comments as we can in there to say, have you considered what are the mitigations you're going to do and that kind of stuff. We've posted that letter on the website also. One thing that's come up is we understand that there's a rumor going around, not that people would spread rumors, but there's a rumor going around that this Mount Zion Baptist Church wants to make the ball field a 1,000-seat stadium, which when you think about it, what does that mean? That means PAs, concessions, parking, et cetera, et cetera. So we were concerned. So we went right to the architect and said, what's the deal? Because this doesn't look like a 1,000-seat stadium. And he said, no, that's never been a plan. It's not in our plans. I talked to the church. I met with them last week, and they said nothing about it. We're meeting Tuesday, and I will bring it up once again. I'll bring it up with them, but there are no plans. So if your neighbors say, Henny Penny, the sky is falling because they're going to build a 1,000-seat stadium there, not the case. And so we'll wait and do that. We're watching everything, and we'll just go through with all the process. Next. Resident satisfaction survey. Thanks for your participation. It was amazing. We had like 43% participation. You identified a bunch of areas. Overall, the residents, were very satisfied with what we did. Had a few knocks on the board, not being transparent enough and everything. So in that effort, we've tried to over-communicate. You're probably sick and tired of all of our notes and articles and the talk of the county, but we're trying to over-communicate. And then Ray Van Cott came up with a great idea, and he says, why don't we have small groups that have an opportunity, if they like to meet with a board member and talk, maybe 20 people with the board member, and they discuss all the different issues. It's not a town hall meeting where one of us gets up and tells you this, that, and the other, but it's an opportunity for repartee and give and take. And that's been very successful. I think all of us have done one, and I know I was encouraged in mine. Mine was the smallest. It was the last one. They normally were turning people away. On mine, I managed to get 7 people out of 20. It's like they're sick and tired of hearing me. I knew that was the case. And I told them I don't have any wine, so maybe that's the other reason. Anyway, so we tried to take some things and we're open. One of the things we are doing is trying to do a baseline survey, and then we're going to ask the same questions or same kind of questions so that we can measure progress, you know. Are we missing the mark here or there, or we are making progress? So that's one of the reasons for it. My assessment, state of the colony, is excellent. Next. Before I, give my thanks and everything for the people that are doing all the work, I received early this morning when I looked at my email a letter from the club, an email from the club, from the manager of the club. And it's an issue that they've come up with. And what I want to talk about is the club is now asking us to just inform our residents, because you're neighbors of the country club, about a new policy that they're going to have for non-golfer activity on the golf course. A little background, Forts Colony Country Club is a separate entity. They're not part of the HOA. They're an amenity, because they're partners with us. It's an amenity that you can choose to take advantage of or not. It's your thing. But they are not part of the Forts Colony common areas, if you will. So that's private property. For safety, Peter Miller came out and said, we need to have a new policy, and our new policy is going to be for, and the reason I'm reading this is I don't want to get it wrong and say something, but I didn't get a chance to put a slide together for you. And basically, it's recreational walking, bicycling, or other non-golfing activities are not permitted on the golf course at any time. Previously, the policy was if it was before golf hours, early in the morning, late at night, they were okay with it. But they said now it's for safety reasons. That's the last thing they want to do is have somebody hit with a golf ball, or you go out there and you say, oh, I got sick because you just applied a herbicide, a pesticide, or whatever the right terminology is in the greens. The other thing is no pets of any kind except dogs assisting individuals that are, say, service dogs, or working dogs that are working with the golf course staff. So I want to pass that out, on to you. We'll put an article in the Talk of the Colony or a little box and everything to do that. But this is the private property of the golf course. They don't want non-registered golfers. You can be a member of the club. If you're not registered to play golf that day, they still don't want you walking on the course. And it's all for safety. Okay. And thanks again to our volunteers. Just to echo what you heard from the other people. If you have an opportunity, we'd love to have more volunteers. We've always got spaces for them. Next. Oh, it's that time.